So why MSME? We'll talk about that now. Let's go to the next slide. So MSME refers to micro, small, and medium enterprises. And throughout the world, there's slightly different definitions, but the more common one is micro is less than 10 employees, small less than 50, medium less than 250. This is also consistent with the EU. Of course, the only difference is the turnover bands per enterprise size. So why MSMEs? I think this is a overkill topic, but we know MSMEs drive economies. I think if I look back at the various reports on statistics um, from different countries around the world, maybe on average over 95% of all businesses that operate or participate in economies are MSMEs. And so they significant contributors, but also it's a well-known fact that they struggle for various reasons, various challenges, from startup to becoming sustainable businesses. And part of their challenges is IT adoption and uh, later IT security. So what is IT adoption? IT adoption is companies going from paper-based to digital-based operations, and different economies from developing to developed or transitioning, whichever terms we use, are at different positions in that continuum of moving from paper-based to digital-based. And of course, one of the main challenges with moving to uh, or adopting ICT is the associated cybercrime that comes with it. So with adopting new technologies to gain the benefits of technology, but you also gain the risks. Emerging technologies also result in emerging risks. So these emerging risks are added on top of the woes of the MSME, apart from having to survive, become sustainable. They now have more and more challenges with regards to cybersecurity. So some examples commonly known: payment card fraud, um, ransomware, uh, various other kinds of hacking and so on that get published in the news. Maybe not so commonly known is how advanced these systems are. You get the dark web, where you can hire criminals, hackers, to do some work for you. You get crime as a service. And why are MSMEs targeted? You know,
Yes,
maybe they're
Dr.
not, maybe they're not very wealthy, but actually the reason is it's more of a test bed, because MSMEs have resource challenges. They don't have the resources to say, I've got a specialist cybersecurity person. They don't have enterprise grade security software protecting themselves. And so hackers find it easy to target small companies. Yeah. And it is fairly advanced. I mean, phishing, you could get an email from someone you know, but meanwhile, that person is actually the hacker, and they can get your information. There's social engineering as well. You talk to people, it could take a person 5-10 minutes to figure out nearly everything about your personal life if we look at social media. Um, so there's a number of things that work against the MSME. And if you think of the typical micro business today, less than 10 people, that's your average household. Um, I'm running a business. I've got a family of 5. I've got 15 devices at home. I got a router. So your typical family today is a micro business, in my opinion. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right. So what's there to help MSMEs? We have these things called cybersecurity frameworks. Collectively, these are made up of regulations, international best practices, standards, and many of these things, of course, with good intentions. They are meant to guide your companies and say you should have antivirus, anti-malware, firewalls, and so on. You should have all these things. And in my recent studies, I've come across at least 250 cybersecurity frameworks. And one of the main challenges to MSMEs is they don't adopt these things. So why? Why don't they do it? It's meant to help them. And the answer is quite simple. It's very um, it's very complicated. It's very commercialized. It's aimed at large organizations. And if you were to adopt a cybersecurity framework and then get audited against it, you are looking at spending a significant amount of money to implement the necessary controls and to then pay for the validation or the ratification that you've actually implemented these things in the under the guise of auditors and so on. So some of these you may have heard of, the popular ones, GDPR in Europe, which is fairly leading across the world in terms of privacy, data security. South Africa, we got POPIA, which is the Protection of Personal Information Act, and so on. There's also some good governance codes. If you look at the King Code, you look at the SOC COSO, and then you get industry-specific type stuff, things like HIPAA, FISMA, PCI DSS, and IT security specific, NIST, ISO, COBIT, CIS. This is starting to sound like a different language for some of you guys by now, right? Okay, so this is what the MSME faces. You're told to implement this. You have regulation. Um, you have to comply, but you struggle with support and you struggle with resources. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what's the state of cybersecurity in 2023? I've put some stats down there, but the bottom line is the MSME have high barriers to entry. If you want to implement an ISO 27000 standard in your organization, you must buy the standard. Now, in South Africa, that could be anything from 60 to 100,000 Rand. In euros, yeah, 5,000 euros maybe. But to the MSME, it's costly. And then you take all those 200-300 sets of instructions that say you must do this, you must do that, and you implement that. That's all costly. And what happens is you have the MSME who have a lack of expertise, they have a lack of knowledge, they're not very aware, and there's an element of abuse. They'll get in a consultant would say you have to implement the entire standard, when in reality you have to implement a subset or a minimum set. And so there's a lot of that going on as well. Some brief stats, there's a hack every 39 seconds. Interpol puts South Africa as the hub of cybercrime in Africa. Since COVID, people working from home, many companies today, from my personal observation here locally, they want people to come back. But in general, approximately two-thirds of people who've gone to remote from working from home, they don't plan on going back into the workplace. So working from home comes back to your family as a business. You got a router, your router has default settings. I drive by your house, I pick up your Wi-Fi, I pick up that you have a specific kind of router. I check the manufacturer says there's a default password called admin. I log in and I take what I want. Uh, and that's basically how it's working. So home security, working from home, individual security. You get executives who feel that they don't want to be bothered with changing passwords. Um, so you get a lot of awareness that needs to be done. Okay, next slide. Okay, so where we are at a situation where MSMEs can face fines. You can inadvertently, make a mistake around data privacy, and you're facing minimum fines, millions of rands. So in Europe, I think the minimum something like 10 million euros, 20 million euros, something crazy. And so we've got a MSME that's sandwiched between two sides. The criminals want to hack you. The governments want to punish you. Um, so, so hence my title. Is the MSME being framed for the crime, hey? And that's where we are. And that's my presentation for today.
Thank you very much, Umesh, for your presentation. It's quite an ominous story, very complex matter, and there doesn't seem to be a way out. Let's ask Bernie van Zijl for his reflection. Bernie.
Right. Thank you very much for the opportunity, reflection, Umesh. Thank you very much for your topic and the detail you've given us. It's a small part of information management these days, and we all know that the digital economy is driving everything, and there's a lot of change. So we've got information management and knowledge management, and under knowledge management, you mentioned the people factor and of technologies, very, very important. I think the people factor, we have technology and we have, I see we have some, thank you, some background noise.
You're being hacked, yeah, sorry.
We've been hacked, yeah. So we've got technology and we've got systems, but very important is also the role of leadership, and that is one of the focus points, I think, leadership for technology. But it becomes even more daunting if we think of quantum computers and we think of artificial intelligence. I've just sort of read the latest book on the age of AI by Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, and Daniel Huttenlocher. And there's a little paragraph under security I would like to refer to. They say, for as long as history has been recorded, security has been the minimum objective of an organized society. Cultures have differed in their values, and political units have differed in their interests and aspirations. But no society that could not defend itself, either alone or in alignment with other societies, has endured. A very, very interesting book and an interesting topic in terms of artificial intelligence and security. I think one could spend a whole day just on this topic of cybersecurity. There's so much to say. But as soon as I started doing my searches on cybersecurity, I found in the EU has given 12 easy points for small, medium enterprises or medium enterprises in terms of practical issues for cybersecurity. And maybe I can put that in the chat box for you all just to see. But it's simple sort of starting points, a policy, for instance. How do you handle your cybersecurity? Awareness, again, the people factor. We don't see any harm in what we are doing, but there's a lot of people hacking us and fishing for information, trying to get hold of our bank accounts. And it is so obvious these days, everything is done via the mobile phone. It is, you don't think of it, it's like switching on a light. You know, it's so obvious these days. Not that disruptive anymore, but the technology itself and what's going behind it confuses people. And the reason for that is people do not know. Things are moving so quickly and so fast that as soon as you think you've got this issue sort of in control, there's something new. And it's all about costs. And we know what cash flow means to small, medium enterprises, as you have mentioned. But thank you very much for your contribution. I think very valuable in terms of the technology side, in terms of cybersecurity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bernie, for your reflection. I see there are some questions in the chat box. Let me read them for you. A person called iPhone, I don't know if that is first name or last name. The connection between leadership AI and operation security is a major issue. It's not really a question, it's a statement. But do you have any reflection on that, Umesh?
Yes, of course. Like Prof. Bernie said, these emerging technologies, AI, etc., quantum computing, they are actually giving the hackers the upper hand, because while your normal organization debates, and I've got this personally now as well, debates the use of things like ChatGPT and so on, the hackers are not debating this, they are using it. So when it comes to leadership, the decision making needs to be it needs to be decisive. You need to decide, is this okay or not, and what you want to do about it. And I often see that this not knowing or not having the right type of information at hand for leaders of a business, because typically your leader of a MSME is not an IT specialist, and they rely on their team. And of course, the smaller the company gets, that team gets smaller until you get to the business owner, manager, who's everything else with lots of caps on. So yeah, hackers are fully utilizing what is available to them. Things like AI, ChatGPT, big data, quantum computing to come. Of course, the more powerful computers you have, I have an example now where one of my colleagues are working on cracking passwords under a topic of ethical hacking, and we need more powerful computers, and we basically use the GPUs or the graphics processor cards similar to Bitcoin mining to crack passwords, and that's what they're doing. They're using the technology at hand, and this is far beyond what the MSME can keep up with.
Thank you. And then I have this question from the same person. He says there is 12 easy points for cybersecurity initiated by the EU.
Yeah.
What do you think of that approach, Bernie?
Yeah, well, I've just put it in the chat box, the document. It's very practical. It's down to earth. I think basic stuff that SMMEs could have a look at.
Yes.
And what do you think of the initiative by the EU?
I think it's very, very good. I think the EU is probably way ahead. If I compare it to Africa, and Umesh, you would probably agree one of the problems we have in Africa is the digital divide, the lack of access to technology, to systems, and to resources, money, for instance. But it's a simple, practical approach I think the EU has towards this, and you have seen from Umesh's reports the important role they are playing.
How would you feel about a global approach instead of a EU or African?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. If you read the latest book on KIF, which Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, and Daniel Huttenlocher has written, there's a whole chapter on security and the world order, which determine or discuss the whole geopolitics we have, and the race between China and the United States in terms of the quantum computer, because the country that's going to crack that nut first is really going to break all security codes, and we're back to square one.
It's not very comforting, this thought.
No.
The key is being up to date with the changes. It's easy to go out of date with cybersecurity and IT, and of course there are a lot of simple things like you must have a firewall, you must have antivirus, you must have good access control, you must have strong passwords. All these things are extremely good advice for small companies, and practically it's not always followed though, and it does often come down to awareness and leadership.
And so one of your, sorry, Bernie.
Umesh, I've got a question. What is your approach to security platforms? Like you have a cloud computing with all its different aspects to it, PaaS and EAS and all those things. What is the possibility of a security platform as a service?
That's a great idea, and it's been around for a long time. People have been talking about having digital platforms available to support small businesses plus security. I don't know if it's politics, governance in different countries. I have part of my research was checking things like incubation hubs, business incubation, innovation hubs, funding, business funding. And these organizations have websites. The government departments locally in South Africa and in other countries have specific departments dedicated to provide you with basic assistance in terms of business support and cybersecurity. If we look at the UK, they've got the UK Cyber Essentials certification, where small businesses must certify. And in there, they must have at least 5 or 6 basic controls in place. If we look at locally in South Africa, there's the National Center for Cybersecurity. Every country has this, but what do you see? They're not adopted. They there, they got funding, they got great documentation. There's organizations and departments of people behind it producing great policy. The policy ends up taking long to be implemented. In South Africa, it's about 10 years of trying to implement the cybersecurity policy, trying to implement POPI, which is the South African equivalent for GDPR. And implementation of policy takes so long, and cybersecurity and IT move so fast, they're always catching up. So governance is always catching up, and it's never good enough to deal with the threat at hand. So there are support, there are digital platforms, especially by country governments, available, but they're not being used. And I know it's a big statement, but they're not effective. The stats is the cold truth. The companies are facing being hacked. The stats are crazy. It's 60–80% of MSMEs have already been hacked. Most of them face life-changing decisions. Most of them, it's something like 40% of them face closure if they get hacked. So it's a significant threat. And the available digital platforms are not, I'm looking for the word, they haven't been adopted by the industry to become a culture. New digital platforms, certainly positioned from a security perspective, but we might have the big organization problem. It has to talk to the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah. Sure.
Any questions? If you have any questions, you people, please raise your hand. Or not literally.
Umesh, I've seen a question in the box about the insurance industry. Do you know, is there something specific for the insurance industry?
Interestingly enough, cyber insurance is almost the I don't know what to do solution. So companies are getting hacked. I've led multiple cybersecurity defenses of MSMEs, but also very large and state-owned organizations. And they are very costly because it brings your business to a standstill. If your devices get encrypted, you've got no more information that you can use. Your business can't run. People who the hackers themselves, if they put ransomware in your environment, they're going to say, give me so much, otherwise I'm not going to unencrypt your data. And there's interesting stats. Many people pay it. It's even government departments. I mean, in the last 3–4 years, maybe I stand corrected, we've had a hospital in Georgia, somewhere in the United States, that paid ransomware. You get government departments, not just in developed economies, that succumb to ransomware because they need their data. They were not ready for it, and they pay the ransomware. And there's another stat, something like 4% of people that pay the ransomware actually get their data back. So that also doesn't work. So it's a challenge when you look at insurance, where the companies then say, hey, I can get cyber insurance, this can help me. And the cyber insurance, at least locally in South Africa, I've seen innovating. I've dealt with a number of companies that ask me for advice on implementing the requirements of cyber insurance, and the cyber insurers themselves that I have discussed with on their questionnaires. And they've kind of made it simple. also, if you take cyber insurance, they tell you you must have these 10 or 20 things in place. Do you have it? Yes, no. You know, you must do a penetration test once a year. You must do this, you must do that. And if you cover that, you get a reasonable amount of cyber insurance.
There's a question by Gbenga Johnson. Please unmute yourself, Gbenga.
Okay, yeah. So thank you so much for this very educative and almost very scary session. Yeah, so I have this weird feeling that the economy of cybersecurity could have some kind of handshake with the black space that we have in terms of people who instigate these threats. So I have a feeling that just this weird feeling that okay, so you tell me I need to protect myself because there is a demon outside there, of a cyber threat. So could it? So it's like a question to say that is there a nexus between the people that are creating these threats and then the people that are creating the solutions? Okay, because if there's no threat, probably there's no need for any security to prevent the threat. So and definitely the people that are providing the security are the first to be aware that there's a threat out there that you need to protect yourself against. So is it okay to suspect that there's a kind of connection behind the scene?
Yeah, that's bordering on conspiracy theory, but but it's an excellent observation. The reality is, you get massive organizations without everyone relies on Microsoft Windows, some people Linux, and so on. And we often find that, or I often see that every month or every day when your machine gets an update to say we need to do security updates, we need to do patches, whatever you call it. Once you do that, you think things are fixed, but actually those things introduce more problems. Now, in the old days in software development, you would develop your software and you deploy it or sell it. And you wouldn't be too security conscious, but somebody else who uses your software starts to decode your code and say, hey, you know what? If you put this in the password box, it's going to break your program. And then today you get what we call kiddie scripters, literally teenagers writing scripts that can break websites. People sitting, like the movies, there's someone sitting in their basement. That is their life. They're trying to break something. And when the software companies find out that something in their software is being exploited, then they say, okay, I'm going to release a patch or a fix. And when they do so, they do it in a way where that is not good enough. The hackers are the best software testers. They find another hole, and it goes on and on like that. And I once wrote a program in school that was over 10,000 lines long, and this was closer to 30 years ago. And software have evolved. If you look at Microsoft Windows, you think a complex program would be 100,000 lines. It could be millions of lines of code. And the software houses themselves, I don't think they now have a full view of what that code is doing. So there is a point where everything you buy comes with a flaw. Whether the flaw is known before they sell it is questionable. I'll put a question mark on that. But what we do know is that the criminals find them first, and then they make use of it.
Umesh, I've got one question. The whole issue of edge computing and fog computing, Is that going to change the cybersecurity issue if you bring it closer to home?
Please bring the solution in 1 minute.
It helps with a concept called zero trust, and this helps organizations because normally, if you're in an organization, you maybe use their laptop, you connect to the corporate network, you have personal information maybe on your laptop or your mobile device, you share information across from one to the other, and that is all the entry points into the organization is a risk. Now, edge computing, etc., aim to move security to the edge, basically move to the device.
We're at a deadline.
So, yeah. So if you want to protect your organization, you want to make sure people connecting are secure. So that's moving it away rather than placing security on your own organization.
Thank you, Umesh.
Thank you very much all for your contribution to this Good Morning BSN session. Let me